Welcome, mother lovers. Today we're going to talk about tools, the tools I have, what I like about them, what I hate about them, and tools I'd never buy again. Before we go any further, if you can, I'd be grateful if you would head over to my Patreon page to support this channel. It's the cost of a pint a month. It's pressure free, no obligation, cancel any time, early access to vids with no ads, the director's cut, and a WhatsApp group for top tier peeps. I hope you enjoyed the video. Be lucky. The planer thicknesser, aka jointer planer. In my opinion, this is the heart of the shop. Without this, you're not going to have a good day when it comes to your joinery. This makes whatever happens next go well. If I had my time again, this would be the first tool I'd buy. Back in the day when I bought this was 2,200 quid. In fact, I probably would step into the workshop without one. Would I have a combo again? No. If I had the space, that is, I wouldn't have one again. I would have a separate machines, 100%. Problem I find is you can mill up all your boards, go and rip them, make a mistake in your joinery, or you haven't thicknessed the right amount of boards, and you need to come back to it. And the nice thing about having two separate machines is there's a good chance you're going to come back to the machine and it's set up exactly the same as it was the day before when you milled up all your stock. And of course, it's a bit of a faff switching between modes, which takes, but I don't have the space, so I've got a combo. I wouldn't recommend this particular model though, but this does get the job done, albeit with its nuances. Take this fence for example. You see it's square now. That's what happens when I move the fence forward. Okay, I can see the pub from here, and in order to fix that, get it at 90 degrees, I've got to mess around with that nut, and there's an Allen key that goes in there. That is a pain in the arse. Hence you almost always see my fence at the back of the planer. I have a really strong dislike for the nuts and bolts. The archaic way in this day and age is pretty bad, how you level off these tables. Because believe me, when you need to get these set up so you don't have any snipe in your cuts, you can take half a day, you can take a couple of days. These things, trouble is with them, when you tighten this nut and you tighten that nut, like so, it will ever so slightly raise that up a bit. And when you've got it right, you put your table down, it's not right because that has not been locked off in the position you had snowed it up to. And it's the same with this, and it's the same with this one. And there's another load of them on that side, and there's two different setups on that corner, which are equally as pain in the arse to do. But you also got to remember, when you mess with this corner, you effectively mess with all the other corners as well. So you quite easily throw those corners out and have to come back to it. My way around getting this sorted out was to undo these, lather them with Loctite, thread lock, whatever you want to call it, put it back each corner, got it all level, cinched them up properly with my hands, and then left it for 24 hours for it to cure. I can't physically move that with my hands. I use this thread locker, pretty damn strong, permanent it says, bends on the length of your bar on your spanner. Last but not least, it's a spiral cutter block. After having a DeWalt lunchbox planer thicknesser, the lunchbox thicknesser was the only tool at the time that I used ear defenders with. When I switched this on for the first time, I was lost for words. I'm not joking. So much quieter. I mean, you can hold a conversation with this running. This does have an advantage over the knives. It can deal with difficult grain that's grown all over the place, better than knives. When I say knives, I'm talking about two knived machines. More knives you've got in a block, the better it's going to deal with funky grain. This machine would do a better job though if the thicknesser function had two speeds, a nice slow speed for difficult grain. But to be honest, I don't really miss changing the knives. I was always cutting myself changing those knives. These are expensive to replace though. I think I'd also really like if the manufacturers gave us longer beds.
Oh, not good.
Before we go any further, my biggest regret was buying cheap tools to start with. As you see, as we go on, you're going to see some spicy stuff. My issue with buying the cheaper tools is that either they didn't last or they'd break really early and have to be replaced. And then I'd probably break again and be replaced. And then I'd want to upgrade them to something better. And the resale value of those tools was pathetic. Unlike the tools coming up, some of the tools I've got here I could sell for the same money as I paid for them new. So financially speaking, buying the cheap tools was a financial disaster really. I did start out with some right old tools, I can assure you. So bad that they were dangerous. If I didn't have the tools I've got, the Festool tools namely, I would be buying Bosch. I've done the DeWalt some Makita, and everything before that. So in my mind, the next upgrade from DeWalt is Bosch, in my opinion. The next step up from Festool, I'd say, is Maffol, but there's not a lot of Maffol tools that really float my boat either. The thing is, when you buy into Festool, it's part of a system that all works well together. I especially like the fact that I could have one power cable for pretty much most tools, so you haven't got power cables all over the place and you're tripping up on them. And not to mention that Festool's dust extraction has got to be the best on the market. I don't mean the vacs, I mean just how they're on the routers when you use them, they really do collect a lot of dust up. I mean, the Festool K-Pax miter saw is excellent dust collection. It's nowhere near perfect, but it's better than all of the rest. You're not going to see much battery power tools in here apart from the drivers. I'm over batteries. I mean, if you've got camera gear, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You're forever chasing your backside, charging batteries for the camera, 2 microphones, the monitor, and I don't do any site work, so it's not really a plus for me, and batteries aren't cheap. Anyone that's had to replace a battery on a Tesla will know that. Also bear in mind as well that the tools I've got in here that was bought quite a while ago, 5-7 years ago, and way before then, so the price differences to what they are now is vastly different. Festool tools back then were, let's say, expensive but affordable. Now they've priced themselves out of the market. If you're in the US, you'd probably call this the heart of the workshop, the table saw. This is my Woodworking AGS 10. It's a 10 because it takes a 10-inch blade. It does take a 12-inch blade. I think I upgraded the motor to a 3 horsepower motor, maybe 3.5 horsepower, I can't remember. I did a video on restoring this table saw. Nuts, bolts, washers, everything. I also added dust collection to it because there wasn't any sort of dust collection on this saw, over and under dust collection. It's as solid as a rock, cast iron tops, cast iron body with plate metal base right down below. I've heard people say in the Woodworking groups on Facebook that pretty much all of them upgraded the fence because they said it was crap and couldn't get it to work. I have done a video comparing this to a site saw, namely the Bosch GX10 or something, I can't remember what it was, but the footprint of a Bosch, of that particular Bosch, is about the same size as this top and more expensive. This costs less than that Bosch site saw. Obviously a lot of work went into it though, and this is a country mile better than that Bosch saw. I'd like to say that it's easy to repair. It is easy to repair because I know the saw like the back of my hand now. Only problem with it is the cost of parts. Take this throat plate, for example. Have a guess how much this cost brand new. 250 quid. So that gives you an idea of what other parts cost for it. The only toys I've got for it is this bad boy. And this is epic. I love this for the money as well. It's really good. The cut capacity of this saw is 850mm, that side of the blade. You could do 8x4 sheets, ply, whatever on this saw. It really depends how you configure these bars. These bars can be moved over here. The shorter ones you can get with a saw, and these bars can go right out there and take up the whole of that side of the workshop. I don't have the space. It does take a dado stack. I don't have one. I don't need one. I have a dado stack in a track saw. One day I might get one for this saw. I like the fact I can take the track saw to the workpiece. Also, I don't find getting an 8x4 sheet of 18mm MDF up here, trying to keep it lined up against that fence, cutting a nice straight line. A bit unwieldy. I'm going to admit I'm not a great fan of changing blades. I have about 15 rip blades for this and one crosscut blade. I prefer using the miter saw. K-Pax 120. I don't think there's a miter saw on the market that competes with this. It's incredibly accurate, does everything with class, trench cuts, miter cuts. What you should get out of a miter saw, you will get out of this saw. The dust collection is a lot better than any other miter saws on the market. Mine's a bit knackered now though. Should have more of a chute there. It's been smashed off by someone else using it. Thank you for that. It's got a good handle. I prefer this. It's positioned just like you would with a handsaw. Those handles that are like that, you couldn't saw straight like that, could you? With a handsaw, you'll never get dovetails off a saw like that. And I think that's probably their thinking here. I think you get the drift though. And also these bars. They're facing forward, they're not taking up another 50mm behind the saw. Everything on the saw that's green is a function. To flip this head, you just lift this up and rotate. And then just lock it back into position. Lovely. It's also easy and it just works flawlessly. But guess how much these cost now? 1,500 quid. I paid 950 quid back in the day when I bought this. There's no way I'd pay 1,500 quid for a mitre saw. It's not worth that price, is it? No mitre saw is worth £1,500. Talk about pricing yourself out of the market. I mean, what do I hate about it? The price tag.
Oh, yes, Daddy.
Every shop needs a router table. They're safer than handheld, obviously. A shank bends on you, you get a kickback or something, a handheld router is going to go flying out of your hands and possibly want to chase you around the workshop floor. This, in my opinion, is the best on the market, mainly because it's metal. I've made lots and lots of router tables over the years out of wood, and I've found with seasonal movement it became an issue, but I wasn't getting nice, perfect 90-degree cuts. With something like a Maloof joint, it's imperative that that fence is 90 degrees to the table. So obviously with metal, I don't have that problem. Unfortunately though, Festool don't make this router insert anymore. If you do find one online, I'd suggest you buy it. You're not going to get it for cheap, that's for sure, because they're well sought after now. There are extensions to buy for this, either side here, and a sliding table here that will give you more cut capacity. I don't have the space for any of that, and this is possibly a little bit too small for me, but generally gets me by, you know. I was going to get a router lift from Banggood and make a video of me making a router table for you guys. Those router lifts on Banggood though are for trim routers, 1/4 inch trim routers. Don't really belong in a router table, to be honest with you, I feel. Unless your trim router takes 8mm shank bits, of course. But when I looked at the price of the router lift and the shipping, and obviously you're going to have to buy a trim router to go with that, or you've already bought it, but still, that's part of the price of that router table, isn't it? It worked out to be a complete con. Now, if you buy instead the Triton TRA001, I believe, it's actually my first 1/2 inch router. That comes with a router lift inbuilt into the router itself. From there on, you need to mount it to a plate and stick it in a table of your make and model. So for a fraction less money, that Triton router takes 6mm, 8mm and 12mm cleats. It's 3 1/4 horsepower. It's made and built for a router table, and believe me, 3 1/4 horsepower is plenty in a router table. Triton router will happily run this big ass panel bit.
Oh, hello.
It only just fits in this router. So anyway, I couldn't really punt that router lift to you and say it's a good idea. I just wouldn't be right with it, because it's not. It's a terrible idea and a terrible waste of money. If you only have the option of putting a trim router into a router table, God's sake, be careful. If it's only a 6mm shank that it takes as well, it's only going to take you to be overzealous with a lump of wood, even if you're only putting a tiny round over on it. And you know, you might slip, you might catch on something like that, for instance, and go shooting into it. You bend 6mm shank, full RPM, it's you'll yourself, because that's not, yeah, I've been there, it's not fun. I personally try to only use 8mm and 12mm shank bits if I can help it. The dust collection on this is pretty awesome. You've got collection from the rear and collection from underneath, and the nice thing about this fence is there's a couple of little, see here, these nylon, let's call them screws, shall we? That really dials in this fence to perfect 90 degrees. Obviously, change the bits from the top, and you can hear that ratchet, right? That's really good, that is. There's another function of this. As you see at the moment, if you wanted to use this like a planer, you can retract this fence. Effectively, you've got a jointed planer on its side. So see, I'm hitting that fence now. So when I come across and I take a cut off, it's going to be supported by that side, just like a planer. You get a couple of little attachments with this. Probably never see me use it though. And that will keep the board down, obviously. And then there's that guard. Yeah, no, I can't be bothered with that. Of course, comes with all your different rings, but so not only is that safer, that's going to do a better job of collecting the dust. You've often seen me use this without that, completely forgot I had it. So not only is that nice and safe for freehand use, it should do a better job of the dust. Unfortunately, you can only run that big bad boy. There's a lot of money left in a router table really, but it does come out quite quickly. The other thing nice about this is you notice there's no track for this to slide backwards and forwards on, which I way prefer because it doesn't get filled up with shit. We've got these two holes here for these to go into, and with these slots the fence slides like that. Just those two is enough to get you full movement to use this fence. Fantastic idea. This plate and the fence and those bits you saw back in the day was 465 quid. The base, which does, you get different plates like this. You can put a circular saw in there. The base, the stand, 436 quid. This folds up. Pretty cool that, eh? And it folds up with a router in case you're wondering.
Our survey said...
This kit is extra for the 2200. As we've got Daddy out of the router table, this is my big 1/2-inch router. These buttons here is for getting the router bits out, which locks that spindle, which is nice and convenient. When you've got the router bit in, you release that. It helps with suction, which is very clever. That's pretty standard for every router really. You've got micro adjusting here, your usual. To lock, turn that handle, which is really actually very just comfortable, and it feels right. Triggers, and you lock, and you can lock the trigger. Party piece though for me is putting in the guide bushings. That looks all normal, doesn't it? Yep. It's magnetic. And also, we've got all sorts of different base plates which just click in and click out. This is a 6mm and 8mm collet. This one, my first 1/4-inch router was 6mm router, was the DeWalt D26 204, I think, and it has a handles, has two bases, the fixed base and the plunge base. It has two handles on the sides of it, like you're holding to someone's ears. I sold that router to buy this router because I'd bought into the Festool system. Thought it would be a good idea and surely going to be an improvement. Alas, it wasn't. Not really a big fan of these handles. Feels weird. I'd rather it was here. It feels more controlled, especially if you're doing any sort of stencil work, you know, freehand, cutting out letters or something. This is bizarre. Worse still is this dust port. Because of the shape of this, it is really stretching this, and eventually these tear because of this port. But worse still, you're routing an edge. This is too low to the workpiece, and that will catch on the edge, which you definitely don't want when you're routing, because if you catch with the edge, you are going to cut into your workpiece in a way you don't want to. Of course, it's got the Festool plug it, which is nice. Maybe that's why I got the handle like that. Otherwise, it's a pretty standard router, I'd say. Also, the other difference between this and the DeWalt is the DeWalt has a light underneath here, which is bloody marvellous for when you're doing freehand router work. This doesn't. Like I said, 6mm and 8mm collets, comes with both. And I've got this little trim, what I call a trim router. So that's exactly what it's for. I seldom make cabinets. It's probably been used less times than I've got fingers on one hand. It's a good little router. It does exactly what it says on the tin. I've got no complaints with this. You can buy extras for this, which would be nice. I have never got around to doing that because I don't use this.
Yeah, boy!
Couple more kind of routers. These get a lot of hate, I think probably because of the cost. Just another joinery system. I wonder if the biscuit jointer got that much hate when that came out. Lots of tantrums had on YouTube when makers bring these out. Unsubscribe, click off, turn off. I mean, it's pathetic. It's pathetic the amount of tool envy people have on YouTube. I mean, the classic one is, look at the size of that workshop. Everybody started out in a tiny little workshop. I mean, the tiny little workshop in America, though, is the size of a double garage. My starting place, well, I did a video on how I started out, and it was probably the size of a small garden shed. You could touch each, you know, the walls either side and the ceiling, but that whole tool envy thing is not something I understand. If I see someone using something and I think, God, that'll make my life easier and make things happen faster, I'm going to do my best to afford it and get it. I believe the pattern will be removed so people will be able to make their own designs of these soon. Pretty sure it's coming up shortly. If you are considering one, I would strongly suggest the 700. The handle's better, it's more intuitive when you're pushing it in than this. I feel doing a lot of work with this makes my wrist feel crampy and horrible. This one's a lot more intuitive how it's used too. I'll pick this one only if I have to. This cuts 8mm dominoes, and so does this and upwards. I can't remember if this does a 6 as well. You can do a hell of a lot more work with this. You can build a bloody barn if you wanted to with this. This is more for your light work, picture frames really, cabinet work for 19mm sheet goods. Biggest problem I have with this is the height stop, which I'll show you now. So you see this, set that to 20, okay? Do you see that there? It's saying 10, isn't it? That does my head in, and I've often made big mistakes doing that. That sets 20, and it's registering 20. With the 700 though, you can also buy some attachments, so you can do everything the 500 can do just using this. That's why I especially think it's the better one to buy. Enough of that.
Pew, pew, Barney McGrew.
I'm not a Festool is my team kind of guy, and I'm only going to buy test Festool. What I buy next has got to be green, grey and blue. I go in the direction of what works for me. The point is, my thinking behind all of this is the tools I purchase are going to make my life easier for however many reasons. For instance, Festool's biggest selling point for me is how tidy they are, how clean they are. Very little dust from them if you're using them correctly. And I'm getting closer to perfection with them. Sorry, giving me more time to achieve perfection with the hand tools. It's not about the brand. I'm not committed to any brand, and especially seeing the prices of tools now, well, Festool namely. Jesus Christ, I saw the Mafal jigsaw, battery powered jigsaw. Price of that for a jigsaw is unbelievable. If I found a better tool than Festool and Mafal, I'd be using those. But Festool don't often get it wrong, and I've got some Festool tools that definitely have got it wrong. All said and done, I can't get behind Festool charging twice the price of a tool what they did 5 years ago. It's out of order and it's just greed. Back then, Festool, when I bought all these Festool tools, they were expensive but affordable in the sense of, I'm going back to that mitre saw, is now 1,500 quid. Buy a table saw for that. You could buy a car for that. I dread to think what you guys in the US are paying for Festool tools. Oh, I'm curious, in the comments below, do you think 1,500 quid for a mitre saw is acceptable? A mitre saw, would you pay that? Yes or no? No long stories, it's not a dick measuring exercise. It's too cold for that. Middle of summer, I'm half inch and a dozen wrinkles and it's pissing down with rain every day. Of course, a new addition to the family. I've already done a video on this bad boy. Those of you haven't seen it, you've missed out. Your loss. The bottle openers in those videos, there's only 2 left. If you're interested, hit me up on Facebook. No, we can do something about that. This is my Jet 16X bandsaw, floor standing bandsaw. I think I've had this 8 years. I think I paid 1,600 quid for it back in the day. I bet that's double that now. This is a must-have for me because I like to make more organic looking furniture, so I need to be able to cut curves. If I had my way, I'd have 4 or 5 bandsaws. I'd never buy those benchtop bandsaw things again. They're useless. They don't have the guts for hardwood. The one I tried from Axminster couldn't even cut 18mm MDF. It would stall. I'd have 4 or 5 of these. Not particularly this brand, mind you, but 4 or 5 floor-standing bandsaws with different power, different blades, different throat capacity, and leave them all set up. I only have to change the blade for the same blade. The problem with only having one bandsaw is if you want to resaw, I've got to change the blade. If I want to do really tight curves, I've got to change the blade. But I won't lie to you, I quite often just leave this thin blade in and resaw with that. If your bandsaw set up right, it will cut straight. If you don't know how to set up a bandsaw, there's a video on YouTube by someone called Snodgrass. You know what that is, his name, Snodgrass. YouTube that name and put bandsaw setup. Thank me later. I would call this a medium duty bandsaw. Resawing is slow, but to be fair, I will do my best not to be buying boards, so I'm going to be resawing them. I'll try and buy the boards close to the thickness I'm going to need. Maybe one day I'll upgrade this motor to a 3 horsepower, 2 or 3 horsepower motor. I'm not sure if you can. I'm not very good with electrics. The one thing about this I'm not overly joyed with is the capacity from the blade to this upright. I often get caught out with that. Admittedly, you've got all this space this side, but that doesn't always work out. I think the biggest blade I've had on this is a 1-inch blade. The trouble with resawing boards is you can often release a lot of tension in the board, so you could cut boards straight like that, but it opens up like that. But then you've got to plane the thickness down to get them 2 sides parallel, which can result in nothing left of the board or even less thickness than you're after. What I would like in a different brand of saw is a speed setting so I could cut metal with it. And also the other thing, this doesn't have a tension release lever, which would be nice, and I'm up forever just walking away from the bandsaw and not relieving the tension on it. The other thing I don't like about this is these. I'm forever smashing my waist into these. There's not exactly much room between here, and you got a camera in this situation as well, makes it even worse. I keep thinking to myself I'll get the angle grinder out and cut these down, but I just can't bring myself to do it. So I cut 260, the thickness of 260. That says 250. That's why I wasn't looking at that, if you're wondering. Speaking of jigsaws, let me show you the worst jigsaw ever made. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the Crapex. I won't go right into it, but most of all, it does not cut square, and I believe someone's got a hack on YouTube about how to get that to work and stuff. I use it like never now, especially now I've got the laser. This is just going to stay in its box. The more I get balls deep into this video, the more I realise if these tools were to go walkies, that would be game over for me. There's no way I could replace them in today's current climate of things. And we all know the prices are not going to go back down, are they? Companies are thinking, well, got away with it this long, might as well keep the prices as it were. Saying that though, three-phase, the way to go, I think, isn't it? Or convert the three-phase motors to single-phase motors. If you have a look on Facebook Marketplace or woodworking groups, things like places like Wadkin, the Wadkin group on Facebook, I found a 10-inch planer on there for 350 quid. You're not going to get a single-phase planer that's of the caliper of a Wadkin for that money, are you? I've no idea how much it costs to install three-phase. I'm on single-phase here. The cost of three-phase tools is about a quarter of the price of single-phase tools. I wouldn't be surprised if you were to have three-phase installed. The saving you've made on buying the three-phase tools would pay for the three-phase installation. I don't know, I haven't had it installed. I wonder if anyone out there that has had it installed knows what it costs. Let's be honest, we're not getting quality or our money's worth from single-phase tool manufacturers, are we? And for the weekend warrior, it's even worse. If you're not making any money back from your hobby and you're married and you've got kids, I don't know how many kids that I know of, it'll be foot-powered saws and charcoal for marking out if things carry on going the way they are. Sorry, I'm not in the best mood. I've lost another friend this week, so I'm a bit doom and gloom.
What is that?
The workbench, probably one of the most important tools in the workshop. It is a tool. It is meant to be beat on. I did make it look nice. I spend 90% of my time at this. This is where I work everything out. This is my assembly table. This is my pairing table, and it's bloody heavy. I don't have a lot of regret, or any regret really, about this bench. What I would say, if you're thinking about building your own workbench, is to go out and look online of all the different designs, all the different types of workbenches, and just make one taking aspects of each design that you know is going to be best for you in your workshop. Like with anything with woodworking wise, it is what works for you. I've watched so many years of YouTube woodworking videos and found a lot of advice didn't work for me, and often actually I found that I'd work my own way and find out how it was done myself. Those Rubo workbenches, they're lovely and everything, beautiful to look at. There was lots of aspects about it though that didn't work for me. They're too narrow. They're narrow for a reason. The leg vise I think is quite unnecessary, especially the cost of the hardware. I definitely would recommend getting yourself a carpenter's vise such as this, big as you can afford and the biggest capacity you can afford. Hardly ever use it, but you know the drill. It's like condoms, better to have them and not need them than need them and not have them. Get one with a bench dog, especially if you've got pop-up dogs. Right, well, pop-up bench dogs, man, I use these all the time. They're so handy, especially if you're sanding. Now you can sand your workpiece. And they retract. Or you can butt stuff up against them. Your domino work, or you know, it's loads. Take these out, and obviously this will go that way around, but so you can see it. Tooth bench dog. So if you're doing some hand planing, that would hold your workpiece. You don't need anything more than that. Those foot you might want to figure that in as well. I hope I get that back out again. It seems to have expanded. If you're wondering why I made these square and not round, because obviously bore out a whole round with a forcing a bit, it's a damn sight easier than making these and a mortise. Obviously with a square you've got a lot more surface area to butt up against. With a round edge you've kind of really just got, you know, a corner, haven't you? I think the square option is the better option. These get filled up with sawdust though. That sounds like those Hercules planes. You know, because they carry helicopters and God knows what else. That's the second one that's just gone over. I am near a military base. Another one. I needed this to be wider because it's my assembly table too. Not only do I need to be able to assemble on it, but I need to hold all the glue, the clamps and everything else I need to assemble what I'm assembling. I also left an overhang on that end, so if I needed to I could sit at a computer and have my legs underneath the bench, because I don't have a desk. What you see in this workshop is it. I don't even have internet here, nor a toilet. Part of my brief was to make this very heavy and have storage. The storage for me was what's going to make it heavy. I think I could have done a better job of the drawers though. Maybe I've just made 2, 1 on bottom, so instead of 4 at the moment I've got 4, 8, and for some reason I made the drawers out of 18mm ply, which is too thick, but I can't budge this. If you're sawing and beating on a chisel, smashing out some mortise or something, it doesn't move. As you probably see, I made this bench out of softwood and hardwood. This is 2x4s, this is oak, mainly because of money reasons. I'd rather be paring chiselling on hardwood than softwood. This absorbs the blows too much. I think making a top for a workbench out of solid wood is a bit of a waste of money because it does get beaten on, glue on it, gets stain on it. I finished it off with Osmo Poly-X, which is a hard wax oil. Glue dries on this, it literally just flicks off. Also commonly on people's benches they put their main vise on what they call the face of the bench. That doesn't work for me because behind that then I've got my table saw and all those drawers plus my tool cabinets there, so it makes sense for me to have the vise here. I don't need this great big long length. The reason for the length here, having the vise on the face over there, is so you can clamp long boards, so you can plane long boards. I can still do that, I've just got a different setup for that. Turns out all that noise was for the King's birthday. I went outside and I think I saw, I think they were raptors, and if they were above 10,000 feet, which they're supposed to be, I really don't believe it. I mean, they look like the size of my car, so they're that close. I think they look a little bit smaller if they were 10,000 feet, don't you? But wow, that's some noise. Anyway, what I do for long boards and why I've got these holes. A Festool domino. And there we have it. For even longer boards, I've got that behind me. If you're wondering why I've got dog holes in my vise, so for when I'm doing pairing, dovetails, I can shed some light on the situation. Get both sides. So for long boards, there you have it. You can get a whole door here if you needed to. You can see I can only put the clamps here. Well, I can actually put them pretty much anywhere. Nearly forgot to talk about height. My bench is going to be different to what you might want to make yours. Pretty much as you make it to your own height. I'm very comfortable like this. If it was down here, bent over. That's why I'm pretty straight. Now the thing is, sometimes you want to be sawing up here, and pairing up here. Got an answer to that too. Ooh. The worktop workbench, a thing of beauty. This is where I made a baby, and I babied it for about a week. Shame really. Because of its size, it's worth making out of hardwood. You're not going to be gluing on it, staining stuff on it. You are going to be beating on it with chisels and saws. If you want to keep it looking nice, I'd put a piece of ply underneath it. This is my mini Rubu workbench. If I was to make a robo bench, I'm sure if I had the space for one, I'm pretty sure it would just sit in the corner just looking pretty, and it would cost a couple of grand to make at least. And this is the answer for when you need to get your eyes closer to your workpiece, especially as you're getting older, and I'm nearly 50. After a carpenter's vise, I think the next best vise to get is a Moxon vise, which is what this is. This hardware I got from Poland. It's really cheap, really quite well made. It's not quite is it Benchcraft? I can't remember what it's called. It would have been nice if these could have been inside somehow, but that's not how it worked out, and for the money, I wasn't going to argue. Pretty smooth. You can see it doesn't take too long to get to the ends. And this is why I think you need a Moxon vise, because look at that capacity. I can get a 550mm wide board in that. Reason for this angle is for sawing half-line dovetails. These lamb's tongues, these were my first ever go at those. Quite pleased with how they came out. Just a nice little detail. You don't necessarily have to do that. You could bevel it. You could just leave them square if you want. I just think that looks nicer. I can't remember what this stuff is called. I think it's called crabber or flubber or something. It's an American stuff. I think they use it to make gaskets out of on cars, but it's brilliant. I did have it with just bare wood, and it does slip. I don't care what people tell you. So this flips over to have another purpose. You get me? The other nice thing about a Moxon vise, if you've got tapered legs, you can clamp them in this. Of course, if you so wish, as you can see on my chisel marks, I did do a build video on this. Fancy that link would be down below. Gotta love the leg joinery though. I cheated, I didn't chisel this out, as you'll see in the video. Looks nice, doesn't it? Circular saws, I've got two. One on the track will cut 50mm cut, and the bigger one on the track will cut 80mm. The TS55. Probably wondering, why do I need two saws? Two different motors and two different cut capacities. One's heavy, much heavier than the other one. If you're doing a lot of sheet goods stuff, you're going to want to use this where it's lighter. Bigger, thick, chunky, like 2-inch, 3-inch boards. You're going to want to use the bigger saw, aren't you? With the thing I don't like about this saw is it is a bit underpowered. You kind of can balance that out by using a low tooth count blade, but you won't get a nice clean cut. Outside of that, it's spot on. Good dust collection. You want to change the blade, it's then locks. Yeah, it's an accurate saw, even to the depth of cut. I mean, when you set that at 10mm, it's going to cut 10mm. This is probably one item I'd like to upgrade to the Mafal saw for two reasons. The Mafal's got a bit more power. It's also got a scoring function, which I'll probably use once in a blue moon, but again, better to have it than, you know the deal. This bad boy. 80mm is quite a lot of a cut. It's not quite the Makita beam saw that's a huge blade. I think it's like a 10-12 inch blade on it or something. And this has the power to run a dado stack. The nice thing about track saws is you can take tool to the workpiece. That's a plunge saw. Can plunge this off the track. It's a bit dodgy doing it. You sort of spin the blade up and start lowering it in. Plunge function is a nice bonus. It's not completely necessary. You can just use a circular saw, plunge it in like I've said. If you're cutting a cabinet, or say sink's a great example, when you cut out that square, then it's really handy. Getting perfectly parallel cuts with a track saw on track, rather difficult. You know, repeating it over and over again. And when you're making cabinets, boxes, you need them to be bang on perfect, really. So it's like anything, really. If you need it in your workflow, is it part of your workflow, then get a track saw. If not, if it's just to break down sheet goods, I'd probably just get a battery circular saw. I've seen a lot of people using 2x4s to lay it across their workbench and then put the sheet goods on top of that. I don't think that's really a very good idea. That's much better. I think I've had that 7 years. It's almost at the end of its life. I've got two sizes. I've got a small one and I've got a huge one that you can lay an 8x4 sheet of ply on top of. The bobbin sander. Not a lot I can really say much about this. I bought this particular one because I liked the bandsaw and I thought, I wonder what the bobbin sander would be like. The dust collection is useless on it. Paper for the spindles stops cutting quite quickly, really, or very handy for curved work. The other big problem I find with this is these plates don't sit flush, and that's why I've got this playing card. There should have been another one that sits in and holds it up, and as you can see, it's pretty clogged up. You're doing that every 2 minutes probably. First cleaning skateboard grip, handy that. Get it on Amazon. This doesn't impress me very much. It's a 2-spanner affair. Please someone come up with a better idea than that. Put it in, lock it, something like that. I've got 3 sanders, not because I'm greedy. You know what they say, two's company, three's more fun. 2 Rotexes, for obvious reasons really. These move a lot of stock quickly. This one for smaller work. These are 125s. The reason I like 125s instead of the 150, if I'm doing a Coopered seat, the 150s probably is only going to be sanding on the edges and there's going to be a hollow underneath the sander. I hope that makes sense. This is my finished sander because it's a 3mm stroke. Gets used the most. Mostly off the planer, I can just go straight to 180 grit on this, finish in 220. Job done. Variable speed. Somehow it knows when the dust extraction hose is connected to it or not. You can change these pads to different softness and hardness. These both have 2 different modes. You've got, I'm just going to call it beast mode. The stroke of the sander is a 5mm stroke. Don't know what this one is. I assume it's the same. It's just got a smaller head on it. So you've got aggressive and so-called finish sanding, but still, it's still a 5mm stroke. So to be honest with you, in my mind, there's no real reason for this second function. From that, you're going to go to this, which is a 3mm stroke, especially if you're staining wood. I think this is my first Festool tool, so this is well over 10 years old now, and I've replaced the bushes 3 times maybe. They're on the way out again, I can tell, because you're getting that kind of thing going on. And with this one, you can also do the triangle sanding for your corners. Hardly ever use that, but it just literally bolts on and bolts off with no tools. Tell a lie, I've got one more sander. Well, that's a sander. When you absolutely positively got to remove a lot of stock fast, this is what you want, this big Makita. It's fun to control too. Not much I could say about it. It's aggressive as You've probably noticed I don't have a dedicated dust extraction system, with all the pipes running around to every tool. I did start out to do that, and the more I looked into it, the more I thought this is a waste of time. You need a really hefty amount of power to suck high volume, low pressure through 4 or 5 inch pipe all around the workshop and not to lose a lot of CFM. If it was running all around these walls and then down to these saws, for instance, dust extractors in the other room, it's not going to be collecting that dust very well. And then again as well, the type of extractors you have on the back of those are for high volume material, for things like a planer thicknesser, arguably a table saw, routers, things that make chips really, things like bobbin sander. Are only going to be creating dust where you would want more like a shop vac. The simple way of putting it really is that low volume, high pressure. If you get the nozzle of your vacuum and hold it close to where the dust is, you're going to find it'll only collect the dust quite close to where that nozzle is. With the HVLP, because you've got a great big hose like that, you'll find it'll collect chips and dust from a larger area. I can't imagine what sort of horsepower motor you would need on dust collection to run around a whole workshop. Probably 5 horsepower or more. So I went with a different route. I've got 4 vacs, 3 Festal ones on a Henry. The thing is, the reason I've gone with the Festals, they're not really any different to any vacuum cleaner, except for the fact is they're really quiet. You might have noticed a bit of a theme here. I quite like decibel levels to be low. Maybe I'm just getting old. The Henry, of course, is as loud as but each vac will service a few tools. I'm not having a vac trailing me around a workshop for me to fall over. It's bad enough having a camera in the workshop. So the one vac over there will do the bobbin sander, the router table. The vac over here will do the 2 circular saws, sanders, small routers, and the dominoes. And then the vac behind me will only services the miter saw. For planer and thicknesser, I've got HVLP in another room, and the reason they're in another room is way back when I had them in the same room, and I've just got those material type filters on the top of them. At the time I had a MacBook Pro and it started going wrong, so I took it to the guy around the corner, because at that time I was living in central London. Anyway, I get a phone call after he's opened up and he says, "So do you mind me asking you what you do for a living?" I said, "Why?" Because I've never seen anything like this. He says, "I'm not kidding you, it's rammed, tightly packed, sawdust in the whole thing. So this is written off. You need a new motherboard." That was an expensive lesson to learn, but what it did tell me though is I'm actually breathing that in as well. So now I've got them in another room. I don't know how well those canisters put on the top, with a tool on it that you could wind round and it cleans the inside of the filter. I don't know how good they are. I haven't tried them. They're an expense I could do without. So keeping them in another room and running the pipe through the wall, fine, and also I don't have to listen to them. The other thing with HVLP extractors, I don't have any heating in the shop, but my only body warmth will warm up this shop 5 degrees or so in the winter. If I've got to do a lot of planing and I turn on the HVLP, it's only within a matter of minutes. It's freezing cold in here again because it sucks all the warmth out. Also, the nice thing about the vacs is they turn on when you turn the tool on, they turn off when you turn. That's not true. They will run for a few seconds after you've turned the tool off and then turn off, which is very nice. HVLP is a different story. I know you can get a remote set up, so you can use a remote and turn it on. I know I'd lose that remote within 5 minutes. I'm not going to have that hang around my neck either. So what I did is I undid the box no volt return switch, I think I got it right, took that out, photographed the wires, then ran meters and meters of wires with that switch to all the tools it needs to turn on, and then made a little junction box and put the no volt turn switch right next to the tool, so I just need to turn it on like so. If you want to know more about HVLP and LVHP, YouTube it and go down that rabbit hole. There's some interesting workshops where there's one guy swears he gets absolutely no mess. Yeah, I don't believe that for a minute. Clamps. They say you can never have enough clamps, and I think the happy medium is to get 8 of each, and I find the longer length clamps you need a lot less of, and the smaller you go down in the clamps range, the more of them you need. I reckon I've got about 20 small clamps, ratchet ones and hand ones, rest are in a drawer. My absolute favourite clamps are the bar clamp. The reason being mostly is you can just buy the heads, and you can have as many different lengths of pipe and all the different size pipe you need, and just swap the heads around. The other really nice thing about these is if you get glue on this pipe, it isn't the end of the world. You just slide that up and it will ping off, which is more than I could say for Bessie clamps, which I hate. I would say these have probably got equally the same clamping power, but to be honest, if you're going to be using the full clamping power of these clamps, there's something wrong with your woodworking. The other nice thing about these, if you're going to be probably gluing up on your own, when you put this over the top of something, it doesn't have a tendency to rock and be a pain, and you don't need 3 hands to get it into place and clamp it and not lose your temper. Whereas these things, apart from the weight issue, this bar's got sort of like teeth in it, so you get glue in it, it's a real pig to get off. The other issue I don't like about it is you kind of got, so you need two hands to work this end, and while you're doing that, this end's moving around on you. You're trying to clamp a box off or something like that in summer. Glue's going off. You haven't got time to mess around. So you've got to put your finger in there and then it'll grip onto the bar and start tightening up. And these are very expensive. I think very overpriced for what they are. These are Jorgensen Pony, I believe. 5003. And I've got some from Banggood. The heads are about 20 quid each, I think. Pipe is dirt cheap if you know a good place to get it from. I think I've got a link somewhere. These are my go-to though. I've got loads of different pipe at loads of different lengths. I've got 8 of this size, 800mm that size, and I use that the most. Quick clamps. Again, these are expensive, but they're bloody handy. I find I only use these when I'm clamping a board down to the pipe clamps, and that helps me keep the board, when it's being clamped, just bowing up in the air or doing that on you. Clamp it to the pipe and it'll stop that from happening. As you see, I don't baby these either. They're covered in spray paint. But they've got a good amount of clamping force too of these bad boys. As you know, I've got these. I've got 6 of these. Very good. Again, clamping the table down to the pipe clamps. Mostly what they get used for over there on my MFT table. I've got these as well by Bessie. These are really light duty stuff. Same issue though. You get glue on here and they don't slide. You could get even worse. You get epoxy on it. Maybe use once a year. I've got a whole drawer full of these. I think these are 150. No, 210. Well, 200 then I suppose with the clamp, the F clamp. Dirt cheap on Amazon. Well, they were when I bought them. Use these a lot.
And the idea of being well endowed, being a bit of a
drills and drivers. Well, you've got to execute every mother lover in the room, except no substitute. T18 countersinking. The screamer for drilling and for screwing around. My air supply, I mean, 150 litres, you don't really need something that big for a workshop unless you're using hand tools or spraying cars, which is why I've got that, because I sprayed a car with it. And the thing I don't like about having that is I just want to use a nail gun to fire a couple of dozen brads. I've got to wait for that to fill up 150 litres of air. Unfortunately, my brother swiped my borrowed, my little one. This is quite nice and quiet though, with this belt driven at the back. It's not something I really like having in the workshop either, because you're sitting there, it's all nice and peaceful, you're pairing away, and it kicks up, makes you jump. A patron asked me to do an extra in this video about my marking tools, what I use, why I use them, that kind of stuff. Excuse me, I am sweating like a cornered virgin. Pencils. I do have these mechanical pencils. I think this is a 0.5mm. I hate using them. The only reason I have one is for rulers like this. What I find is you put your lead in there, you're going across the grain, it's snapped, it just keeps snapping. So I seldom use them. Now I have 2 pencils, 2B and H pencil. The reason I have an H and a B pencil, the H pencil I use on hardwood and the softer lead I use on softwoods. Now you might notice from the tip that that's got a very sharp thin point on it. That's because I use this pencil sharpener. This is very handy. This is quite expensive for what it is, a pencil sharpener, but it gets me a nice sharp point on my pencils, which is what I want. I have this pencil, and there comes a time when you're doing dovetails and you've made your pins tiny and you can't really get in there to mark with anything. So hence why I've shaved that pencil down to almost to the level of the lead, so I can get it right in there and mark any markings. When it comes to using a marking knife, this is my go-to. This was made for me, and the reason this is my go-to and not this one is because of you've got one flat face and then you've got your bevel on the other face. So when you offer it up, you know that flat face is at 90 degrees to that cut, to the square, which is why I don't like these marking knives with the sort of surgical blades. You know, it's got the bevel on both sides. I don't find that as easy to reference off of that, so I never use that. This is what I bought, tried and hated it, and I've kept it. It's like I can't bear throwing tools away, because you know one day you're going to need them. But outside of that, my marking wheels, this is absolutely my favourite, the Type marking gauge. The mechanism mainly. I've never had this one slip on me either. Pretty much get it to measurements roughly you want, lock it off at the bottom, and you can micro adjust it to where you want it and lock it off. You also notice there's a groove in there which also helps stop it from slipping. That flat edge on there, it just didn't come like that. I filed that down to stop that from rolling off the bench, which this always does. I originally bought this one because it was cheaper and I can't get on with it. I don't find this whole setup, this mechanism thing intuitive. You won't get this out of the box and go figure out how it works, put it that way. And I've had this slip on me, which really hacks you off when you've got this dialed in and you're doing God knows how many tenons and mortises and you've got halfway through them with this one. So that's one day I'll go get another one of these. So I've got two of these. I think you can leave them both set up and you're not going between different setups. My hand tool cabinet. I've had a few iterations of these over the years, and of course as the tools grew and changed, so did the toolbox need to change, and I eventually got to this point where I felt there's not really going to be much that's going to change with my hand tools anymore. I've kind of got where I need to, but I did make sure I left a door with space in it, hence why there's 4 doors on the cabinet. My only brief for this tool cabinet was not to make one of those stuffy ones, you know, the old sort of traditional looking ones. And the front of the cabinet I burnt and chased out the grain with a wire brush to give the front some texture. I've done a video on this. Not many of the tools are in there are brass, most of them are silver and brown, so silver and brown were really was my palette, hence the cast iron handles and the boat ring handles, whatever they're called. Even the hinges are silver. The drawers are all removable because they've all got stuff in. I can literally just pull out the drawer. So I'm doing dovetails, I pull out the dovetail drawer and put it down and everything's there. I'm not going, oh, need that, need this, need this, need that, and putting it away. And then when I'm done, it's just plonk and back in the drawer. I'm not a fan of the cleat walls. And the funny part of this is, main reason I'm not a fan of the cleat walls is they collect a shitload of dust and they're an absolute pain in the arse to clean. You also get dust down the back of the cleat, so when you try and move a tool and a cleat to another position, you'll usually hit a load of dust, so you've got to vacuum out that before the tool will seat properly. So anyway, the whole purpose of this cabinet was mainly I wanted doors on it, so when I'm not using it or the tools in it, I'd close the doors. As you can see, I don't close the doors. There's not a great deal I can really say about it. It's a very personal thing, building your own tool chest. No one else is going to have the same tools as you or your needs. The main part at the back where the hand planes are and the saws are, that is removable. I can change that. Unfortunately, I had to sell a hand saw and a hand plane. Things aren't wonderful at the moment, so I've got 2 spaces in there, which just drive me mad seeing that. C'est la vie. I won't actually get into all the tools in the cabinet. For the most part, the hand planes are Veritas chisels or different brands. But again, way back when, they were kind of affordable. Now they're double in the price. I want to say a big thank you to my Patreons. Hope you're kicking ass and taking names. Massive thank you for helping keep things going. I make call from ads on YouTube. You're what makes the difference. Big thank you for that. Be lucky.